Alrighty, so before I do the review of last night's CONCACAF Champions Cup game involving MLS team, I want to finally do this rambling about everything that is wrong in MLS. Because as you probably know, what happened last night in terms of MLS team when they faced against their Liga MX's opponent, I swear that was probably one of the worst night, if not the worst night I've seen an MLS team getting absolutely destroyed by their Liga MX's opponent in this competition. And I thought this was kind of the perfect time for me to kind of finally do this rambling. And in some way, it's kind of a rant as well in terms of what is going on wrong with the league. And usually, I basically would have a board and basically talk about a specific talking point. But instead, in this rambling, this is just kind of open ended. And in some way, I would say that this is kind of like a monologue in terms of talk about my frustration, and I'm pretty sure everyone that has been following this league or even supporting one your team dearly that is a very frustrated about the situation that's gone on in MLS in 2024 and even from the past couple of years. So I also want to say that in this rambling, I'm actually glad that I don't work in the media, and I don't know if I said this before. I will never accept any job from either from the teams or from media that they want to hire me as an analyst and stuff like that, because I always want to be independent. I always want to have this platform in YouTube basically talk about MLS, because I know there's not really a lot of people that doesn't in YouTube. I think the only one that I know that talks it well in a passion is Danny T Radio, and I recommend you guys check out his channel. Obviously, he's definitely bigger than I do, and he does even better it things in terms of talk about multiple topics, like the situation with MLS, and he even kind of create his own monologue in terms of the problem that Don Gaber has with really just putting this league to a point where it's pretty much unrecognizable of what I thought this league could be, and it started to just go all downhill in terms of all the things that has gone wrong with this league in the past couple of years. But going back to in terms of what I talk about, what is wrong with this league, and again, from what I heard from yesterday, in terms of after the Union getting absolutely destroyed by Pachuca 6-0, and Orlando City, of course, losing 4-2 to Tigres, though they were down 4-1 and they were just getting embarrassed by Tigres. And I know there's going to be some people who say, well, this is nothing new. I mean, we've seen this before with MLS team when they go down to Mexico, they're going to get absolutely destroyed by their Liga MX opponent. And in some way, I've also said before how, that of course is the case. It's almost impossible to get resort down in Mexico to against the Liga MX team, and that we're seeing it in full force once again. But what is really alarming is the fact that after last night of how both of these teams just getting absolutely destroyed, and in a way where we fought that a couple years ago, and I even said this to myself that I thought we maybe were closing the gap in terms of the competitive between MLS and Liga MX, and that happened. I mean, that's just shows you that there is clearly something that has gone wrong in MLS. And one of the things that I've heard about that is the big reason why it great it once again feels like a golfing class between MLS and Liga MX is the fact that the league is clearly not spending on their roster and not expanding the salary cap, or even just get rid of the salary cap in general. Now, I have had my opinions in terms of talking about the salary cap, and that I, including many MLS fans, have agreed that the salary cap that every team has to work with is clearly not enough, and that we've seen that has had a big effect in terms of what is going on in terms of the other things that is. And I'll of course get to talk about the US Open Cup and how that competition, it's kind of sad, the fact that the league is clearly ignoring the US Open Cup. Like, if you look at the league and in terms of all the things that they talk about, all they talk about is basically the league itself. This year they've been barely mentioning in terms of the CONCACAF Champions Cup, and I don't think that's a surprise because it's pretty clear what they want to do. They really want to make sure the Leeds Cup is kind of the new thing, and the Leeds Cup has been one thing that I've said it since day one, and this is not going to change my mind. As much as it was very fun last year in terms of seeing the Leeds Cup, and it definitely gives me the MLS's back tournament vibe, it is still a cash cow kind of competition. It's a soulless cash cow kind of competition that is not even organized by CONCACAF, and that even if you win, that you don't really go into the FIFA Club World Cup, which is something that MLS wants their team to be in, because that will not only be a way to get them to play against other teams around the world, but actually give recognition to teams that basically or give recognition in terms of the league that they have made it in terms of now being in the world stage, facing against some of the best team not only in the world but even in Europe as well. This is why when the Seattle Sounder made it to the Club World Cup, that was such a big deal, not only for the Sounders but just the league itself. It's just kind of a watershed moment that finally we have had a moment where the league can have a team that can showcase in the biggest stage in the world in an intercontinental competition, and we'll see whether or not if we're going to see that in 2025 as well. Though I have a feeling that's probably not going to be the case, judging by how things have gone in terms of this CONCACAF Champions Cup. But again, going back to what I said about the money's sake, yes, obviously the league needs to increase the salary cap. Now, I will say that for some people that say that they should just get rid of the salary cap in general. I mean, there are some benefit and disadvantage in terms of it. Obviously, the big disadvantage is the fact that if you get rid of salary cap, parity discussion will immediately bring in. And I think the parity this discussion is definitely one of the thing that people have been mentioned about how, if they do get rid of the salary cap, then you're gonna see all these big teams basically spend a lot of money to bring in all these players, and now the parity is basically gone because you of course have the big five, and that's kind of bad for the league itself. You basically are just turning into like all those European league where you always have the big five kind of team, and the rest of the teams are not really fighting for anything. It just gets boring. But I can also see the other argument, and I think this may be my own argument, of the fact that I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. And technically, I also wouldn't say that just because if they get rid of the salary cap, that means the parity doesn't exist anymore. Mainly because we've seen before in other leagues where when they get rid of the salary cap, like just an example, Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball is the only league here in this country that doesn't have a salary cap, and even though I know that in MLB we have seen who is the biggest spender, and some of these biggest spender have regularly made it to the playoffs, while the small market team basically have been left behind the dust. It doesn't mean that all these big market team, when they make it to the playoffs, they just dominate. In fact, when you look at all the teams that have won the World Series for the past couple of years, it's been different teams that have won the World Series. Yeah, sure. I know the Houston Astros and the Dodgers has been making the World Series a lot recently, but that being said, you also have some unexpected team. I mean, this World Series in general, just the Texas Ranger and the Arizona Diamondbacks, two of those teams that are not known to be big spender. Although you could argue the Rangers, of course, is kind of that big spender team because they spent a lot of money in the past couple of years. But that's not the case for the Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks never been a teams that spend too much money. They kind of develop within their organization, and that's kind of an example of it. And I would also say that, looking even at Liga MX, and in terms of them not having a salary cap, I know that in Liga MX there are definitely the big teams out there like Club America, like Chivas, or even the two Monterrey team in Tigres and Monterrey, both of them of course spending the most out of anybody in the league. But that doesn't mean that they win every single time. In fact, in the past couple of years we have seen different Liga MX team win the Clausura and Apertura. We've seen Cruz Azul did it. We've seen Atlas did it a couple of times. So I just think that in terms of the parity this discussion, and the fact that I would kind of maybe start to say that I don't really always agree in the argument, the fact that if the league remove the salary cap, it's going to destroy parity, because I don't think that's going to be the always the case, because as the old saying goes, just because you spend so much money and basically throw money around and hope to build a good team, that doesn't always work out that way. And I think a great example of it is what we saw with Atlanta United for a couple of years ago, where they were known to be the biggest spender. They're always the one that is the most ambitious in terms of spending players. And I even throw in Messi's team, Inter Miami, into the fold as well. And this is before when Messi, of course, arrived, where Inter Miami were also one of the bigger spender. They've spent a lot of money on players and stuff like that, but things haven't just quite worked out. I feel like at the end of the day, you know, it's not all about the money that of course you're spending in terms of the players that you bring in. It's about if you're actually investing on the players and spending the money wisely and bringing the players that can fit your team, and especially the coaching and the system that it works. And I think that's kind of what people are not understanding in terms of the fact that they worry about, well, once the salary cap is gone, there goes the parity as well. No, it parity will still exist. It's just that now it also means that while some teams have now has the freedom to spend money, it doesn't mean that those teams have freedom to spend money. Can they do it wisely? Because if they can't do it wisely, then I would not be surprised if some of these teams that are the biggest spender, like Atlanta United, like Inter Miami, or and like the LAFC of the world, they might not do very well in the league just because they spend so much money on it, and turn out those guys are a big flop. Now going back to the discussion in terms of just what happened if they do not decide to get rid of the salary cap? Well, as many people have said, they absolutely have to increase the salary cap and really increase the roster. I mean, this also goes back to what I said about the U.S. Open Cup, and that the U.S. Open Cup. I've said this many times before, and I'll say it again in this rambling as well. It's sad to see what's going on with how MLS is treating the U.S. Open Cup, and that I think this is also a clear example of how really just in the modern world of football, how it feels like money has now been taken as a priority rather than heritage. And we're seeing right now where MLS is clearly taking the League Cup like its premier kind of tournament, because that's where the money gets. But they don't really care about the U.S. Open Cup, mainly because, well, yes, I know it's been around since the 1900s, but it doesn't really generate a lot of revenue for us, and also fans don't really care in case, because the attendance has been very bad. And in some way, yes, the attendance hasn't been good in terms of these U.S. Open Cup game, and that maybe is kind of one thing that for this upcoming U.S. Open Cup competition, there's no doubt that these fans or these MLS team that at least is still involving in the U.S. Open Cup. I hope the fans really show up to kind of just prove to MLS that, yeah, not they're wrong in terms of talk about the fans don't show up. They actually do care about this competition, and a lot of these lower leagues actually care about this competition too. There's a reason why USL has emphasized their message that they really care about the U.S. Open Cup, and are very against of what MLS is doing, just clearly ignoring the U.S. Open Cup in favor of MLS. But that all should not be a discussion if they just expanded the roster spot. If they expanded the roster spot, heck, if you have rules where you can actually expand the roster spot just for the US Open Cup, it doesn't even have to be for MLS say, though I do think that should be the case, and it's especially the case in the CONCACAF Champions Cup as well, because you're basically seeing now with these teams that doesn't really have a big squad, and doesn't have a lot of depth, and also not to mention don't have the resources to spend on defensive pieces, mainly because they spend it all on attacking pieces, and they don't have any cap space to do so. That's kind of has hamstring a team, even though you've been saying that you want to see some of these teams feel the best team in these continental competition. Well, how can they do it if you're basically hamstringing it because of the salary cap and the roster rule that you basically currently set? And going back to, of course, talk about the U.S. Open Cup. I mean, just again, the U.S. Open Cup would be a competition that every MLS team would be able to do if the roster spot would be expanded, and if teams are allowed to spend more money. Because I know the league basically also used the argument of, well, it's fixture congestion. I mean, there's no way you can have a U.S. Open Cup competition and a Leagues Cup competition, and also just just in a CONCACAF Champions Cup competition, and even heading into the playoffs, and all that fits well. I mean, we saw last year that obviously it didn't quite work so well. That's why a lot of coaches and players were really complaining about this. But that could easily fix if they just expanded the roster, because now you're basically forcing seeing teams to, sign some more players, either from other from their MLS Next Pro kind of thing, maybe promote some of those guys from those roster, or just able to sign more players elsewhere as well, and increase and use that increased spending to sign those players to add more depth to the team, that that those are going to be the players that they could use for these competition, and that coaches won't have to worry about, oh, we have to put these guys in to the star 11 pretty much every single game, mainly because we just don't have the roster depth to compete in all sorts of competition. Bottom line in terms of all of this is that basically the reason why we've seen teams have really struggled in terms of playing in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, and then getting back into league play, isn't because mainly the fact that maybe they got a big win in the CONCACAF Champions Cup or had a big letdown. Then that's why they uh they don't do well in the league. It's mainly because these players are just fatigued. Like, it's not easy for teams that play in MLS and go down to Mexico, playing in a high altitude, as what we saw with the Union had to deal with going down to Pachuca in a high altitude kind of setting, and then come back and expect everything is going to do well, and all that in a span of just seven day in free games, and that they get like a 3 day rest. That's just absolutely impossible if you decide to go with the same roster, or even close to being the same roster. If you just expand the roster, if you just at least allow teams to able to fill some of their backup players in some of these games, and then maybe they could also focus on other competition, that basically will work out much better than what we see. That's been something that everybody has been wanted the league to do for the past couple of years, and maybe even for a decade now. Of, if MLS is going to want to do well in the CONCACAF Champions Cup and want to feel their best team, then how about maybe don't exhaust some of these best teams so much to a point where you can clearly see fatigue comes to a factor, and that even the most talented player, like what we see with the Union. And I know that 6-0 loss was an absolute embarrassment, but I kind of also don't blame the fact that those Union player kind of quit, because you could see the fatigue was at an all-time high. They looked like they were completely out of gas because of the amount of games that they play, and that it's not like Jim Curtin can do anything about it, because he just doesn't have the roster depth to do so. And I also have heard about how, well, the reason why they don't increase the roster the rule, or the expand the roster, is because these kind of low spending kind of ownership group, or owners that want to block those move. Well, I think it's getting to a point where you got to force it to do so. And I know that might upset some of these owners and stuff like that. Well, good, because if those low spending owners don't want to be part of it, then they can just leave. Like, honestly, I just feel like, of all these teams that have low owner, and me wearing a San Jose Earthquakes uh kind of t-shirt, and as a Quakes fans for over a decade now, has been always been very frustrated in terms of John Fisher ownership. And that I feel like, if there is a case where, if John Fisher is just gonna be so pissed because of the league basically increased the spending, and he doesn't agree with it, then I'm perfectly fine of him leaving, because I don't think there's any Quakes fans right now in the world will be pissed if he decided to leave right away, because that's been something that every Quakes fan's been fighting for, and been really demanding for the past couple of years, and maybe for almost a decade now, ever since he has been managing this team. And again, I just think that all this argument about, well, these owners that doesn't want to spend, their kind of hamstring in terms of that, well, find a way to make sure that they appeal to this plan, and just also say that if you don't agree with this plan, then guess what, you're going to be left behind, and we're just going to go through with it. The fact that it feels like the league wants to appeal to all the owners, and I get you want to appeal all of the owner. You don't want to have kind of revolt situation, but the fact that they're okay with just kind of appeal with all the owners, even though they know that it just feels like they're kind of being hypocritical in terms of their personal interests. They want this league to grow and they want to see their team to do well in intercontinental competition. But on the other hand, they're being very hypocritical, saying, "Well, we're still going to hamstring all these teams and not increase the roster rule and expands the roster rule and expand the spending just because we're trying to appease to these fan base or not fan base, but just ownership group that doesn't want to spend too much on their team. It's a very frustrating thing, and it's just something that I wish MLS would have more of an authority. I also would like to say that going back to the U.S. Open Cup, I'm also very disappointed in terms of the reaction that the U.S. Soccer Federation has, where I just don't get why the U.S. Soccer Federation doesn't pressure MLS more. It's almost like right now, the thing that's gone wrong in terms of American soccer is that MLS has really taken a monopoly in terms of the soccer pyramid, and this is also why that maybe in another rambling in another day, I think we're gonna have a civil war between MLS and USL in general. I think there's gonna be it's been brewing for the past couple of years because of how much dislike that USL and MLS has been because of the conflict of different interests, and I will not be surprised that there will be a civil war. And this is where I think if you're MLS, the worst case scenario of this is that you might see USL might start to do something that fans really want. I mean, USF have already mentioned that they might be doing promotion and relegation, and that's something that has appealed to all the pro rel kind of crowd out there. Then you can see some of them that has already been MLS. They're gonna make the jump to USL, and that if MLS is gonna start losing fans to USL, I guess maybe that might be a time for them to kind of pressure them in terms of doing something because at the end of the day, they don't want that to happen. They want to have their league to continue to grow. They want their league to continue to make money as well. So yeah, again, I just feel like there could be a civil war that could be brewing in terms of MLS and USL. But like I said, that's another rambling that I could do on the other day. On top of this rambling about just so much things that has gone wrong with MLS, and I haven't even touched on talk about the Leeds Cup as well. But I really don't need to do too much rambling about the Leeds Cup because we all know what everybody feels about the Leeds Cup. Nobody likes this competition. Hell, even people down in Mexico don't like this competition mainly because we can't even watch our team play in our own stadium because all these games are taking place in the U.S. And again, I can see why they decided to do this because the whole point of the Leagues Cup is not really just provide a great tournament. Well, at least they pretend that it could be a great tournament, but the whole point of the Leagues Cup is simply just making money. It's just making more money, getting more out of the pockets of people attending these games. And as much as I know, I've heard a lot about people talk about boycotting the competition. I don't think it's going to be that successful if you still have fans show up to these games, especially when you have like these big Liga MX teams like Club America and Chivas going to these games, and they'll definitely have some big fan base supporting the team. Yeah, I mean that's not gonna work so well if you decided to kind of boycott this competition, and then you might have like 20,000 still pack the stadium because yeah, that's kind of how it is. So yeah, again, the Leeds Cup it is another thing that I think the Leeds Cup is kind of the one of the big talking point, and really just how do you say that they are kind of the center of the attention almost in terms of this whole thing that has gone wrong with this league. And this is also where I've heard about people have said that if MLS really needs the Leeds Cup, which I think it's pretty clear that they do, and as much as I know some people really want them to get rid of this competition, I don't think it's going to happen. I think MLS have already stated that they committed to this competition. But if they're really committed to this competition, I really hope that they could have just done what they do with the Gold Cup, or even what they do with what some teams have done in terms of the continental competition, make it every 4 years, like, or even make it every 2 years, like what we see in the Gold Cup. Don't make it every single year because it just feels like it's a bit of a nuance in that again again I think a lot of people have even said that it just kind of doesn't make sense, and it kind of really disrupt the flow of the season where you're having a really good season and then, oh wait, we have to pause because we have to compete in this nuance kind of competition that, yeah, yes, it's great to win this competition, but all it gets you is a CONCACAF Champions Cup place. And when you get into the CONCACAF Champions Cup, it doesn't really reward you that much because it goes back to all the issue that I've mentioned why MLS team hasn't done well in terms of the CONCACAF Champions Cup, and that's mainly because they just don't have the resources and the roster depth to compete against these bigger Liga MX team that has the resources and has the money to spend on. So yeah, that's another thing that I think the league is gonna have to look at, and that I also won't be surprised that the only thing I can think why maybe the league might start thinking about the Leagues Cup might be a bad idea is if the attendance are starting to be really bad, and I have a feeling the attendance could be really bad. Like last season, even in the inaugural competition, some of these games they were not fill up, and even with some of these games that are filled up, I've heard that teams had to basically give season ticket member like free tickets to go to this game, or at least part of the season ticket package, because they know that if they decide to charge people to attend these games, nobody's going to attend these games because that's kind of how it is. So yeah, I just think that if that of course is the case, that also kind of goes really against the argument of MLS, basically using an argument to say that, well, we don't really care about the U.S. Open Cup because no one shows, but we care about the Leeds Cup because it's the Leeds Cup, and we still make money, even though no one, of course, show up in some of these games as well. I mean, do you see the contradiction in terms of this argument? But yeah, either way, let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this. Again, this is just a crazy rambling that I've just did in terms of everything that's wrong with MLS. I might have even gone off topic a couple of times, but that's kind of what the rambling and rant is all about in terms of all the things that have gone wrong in MLS. And let me know in the comments below, what do you think of it? I mean, you can definitely be happy to disagree with some of the things that I mentioned. Maybe some of the things I mentioned aren't necessarily correct. But one thing I will also say, and I said this in the beginning of the video, this is why I don't want to be part of any MLS media. Or if MLS called me tomorrow and they want to be part of their media team, I would absolutely say no. And that goes the same if the San Jose Earthquakes called me tomorrow and wanted part of their media team. I would say no either, because the reason why I would say no is because right now, it's the other thing that hasn't really been talked a lot is because if you're a media member, you kind of almost had to follow what MLS wants you to report, because some of the things that you could report that MLS might not like, you could seriously get in trouble. And we've seen it before too with some of these media members has been kind of blacked out and censor out, mainly because they said something bad about MLS or even their ownership in general, and now they're out of a job. So like I said, this is why I don't want to be part of the media. This is why I want to have this platform that I can openly and said stuff that I think that will be legitimate point that hopefully MLS will eventually improve, and just kind of learn from all the mistakes that have made. They have made a lot of mistakes that I think is really holding the league back in these past couple of years. But let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this video, and also let me know in the comments below, what are the other things that kind of went wrong, and also let me know in the comments below if you want me to do something similar to do this as well, because I can definitely make another rambling about other things, including even talk about my team in general, the San Jose Earthquakes, and my pain and suffering that I've been gone through for this team for the past 11 years. So ever since I start supporting them in 2013. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys to like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.